Hello everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beaded Kumihimo bracelet with a button and loop closure. So this is what the main part of the bracelet looks like. So you have your beads running all the way down the center there in a row, and you have these kind of single individual braids on either side, but it's all connected together and all made on a Kumihimo disc as well. So we're adding the beads along with making the braid as we go, and then I have my button here on one end, attached with a bit of macrame, just some basic knots, and then we have the loop on the other end. And this is also Kumihimo, and it's all incorporated into the same design here. It's nice and secure and comfortable to wear. And the effect it can give on the wrist can be something like this. Obviously it'll be different depending what materials and what colours you choose to use, but it sits really nicely there. So the length of this bracelet here is about 7.5 inches from the end of the loop to the beginning of the button, because obviously the button's going to go inside the loop, and that's using 21 beads in total using these specific materials. So if you want to make it shorter with these materials, then you can just use less beads and that'll make that midsection smaller, or the same, you can add beads if you want to make it longer. But if you're using some different materials than this, you might have to just take into account that that'll change the effect a little bit, so that could change the size in itself. But then we can just easily use the button and the loop there to close it with, and then that button also adds a nice decorative touch to it. You can see right there. So if it flips around while you're wearing it, that doesn't really matter too much. Then you have your beads going all the way around. But do let me know in the comments down below if you plan on making this. I would love to know, and if you do, and also if you make anything else from my tutorials, I would love to see it. So you can always tag me on Instagram and follow me as well if you want to. There's going to be a link down below there to my account. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be using. First of all, here I have both my round and my square Kumihimo disc, because we're going to be making two different braid structures within the bracelet. And then the cord that I'm using is this 1mm satin cord in this bright pink colour. Obviously you can choose whatever colours you want to work with. You can also use a different kind of cord. Just be aware that different kinds and thicknesses will give you slightly different results with this technique. And then the beads that I'm using are these 6mm rounds. Now these specific ones are silver coated hematite, just because I like them. I thought they look nice with the cord, but also they have nice large holes, because that's what you got to make sure of, is that the holes in your beads will be able to take two lengths of the cords going through. So something like metal spacer beads would also work really well. And then finally I have my button here that I'm going to use to finish it off with. Now this specific one is a Shank button. So it just has a single loop on the back, and it's just a nice flower design. So let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So then first of all, we're going to need to cut some lengths of cord, and what I have is 6 lengths of about 1 meter each. And then I make sure all the ends are together. Now fold it over in half, put the ends together again to find where the midpoint is, and then that's about here. And then what we need to do is tie a knot to hold the cord together, but I actually need to tie that a bit away from the midpoint, so go about 10 centimeters towards one side of them and then tie the knot there. And also what I've done is I prepared all the ends of my cord here, so just taking a lighter and singe the ends, and then make sure to kind of roll it to make this little needle. That's going to make it much easier to feed them through the beads. So you can do this if you have had synthetic cord, but not if you have a natural one. So I then took my cords and attached them onto my round Kumihimo disc, because what we're going to be doing is first of all making the loop in the middle of these cords, and we're going to be using a round braid structure for that. So what I've done is that knot I've added to the middle of the disc down through that hole, and then I've taken the short end and they're just coming down behind the disc, and then the longer ends are the ones I distributed on the disc here, because obviously they're going to be used up for that loop. So how I've distributed them on the disc here is really just a matter of getting them spread out evenly. So I've just attached one cord after the top dot, and then one cord after the bottom dot there, but if you kind of move around, then that will be the top one is after it. So basically just straight opposite each other, and then on the side I've just attached them so they have even spacing between them, so they have 4 slots between them with that dot right there in the middle, and the same on the other side. So it's really just to have them evenly spread on the disc. And then as for the braid structure, it's really quite simple. What we're going to do is keep working opposite each other. So it's kind of like the 8-strand braid, we're working in opposite pairs, but obviously we have just one cord laying opposite each other like this. So what I'm going to do is take the top one, to release that, bring that down in the slot right next to the one on the bottom there, so just to the right of it, and then I'm going to bring that bottom one up and into the slot on the top, again the slot that was right next to the original one. And then what we need to do is turn the disc, skip one cord and turn it to the second cord, and then we take that one, that's a new top one, bring that down on the right side there of the bottom one, then we take that bottom one, bring that up and place it into the left slot compared to where the original one was coming from. Now one way to easily tell where that is, because you can quite easily get confused and maybe put it in the same one that we took the other one from, it's not too crucial, but just to kind of keep track of them all, is you can see here this creates pretty much a perfect straight line because I put it in the right slot, whereas if you put it in the next one you can see it kind of creates an angle between them. So that's one way to kind of pay attention that you're putting it in the right slot. But then that's another one, and then move, skip one cord and then take the next one, the top one, bring that down, and then the bottom one, bring that up, and again we'll get that straight line, and skip one and then do the next one. And basically that's all there is to making this braid structure here. So it ends up being a round braid just with 6 cords instead. So keep doing this until you have the length that you need that's going to fit the button that you're using. So now that I have a braid here on the back of the disc, then what I just want to show you is how to measure against your button that you're using, because it might be different one that you're using, so the measurements are going to be different now. So what you're just going to do while you're making it, so don't take it off the disc or anything, is kind of on the back here, create a loop shape, make sure it's from the end of the braid to the end of the braid, so don't include the knot, and then put them together, and then basically see if your button will go through easily or not. Now obviously you don't want this to be too long so the loop becomes too loose, because then that won't really hold either. So that seems to fit just perfectly. So I can get it through so it's neither too tight nor too loose. So I know that this now has the right length that I need. So then when we have that braid ready, what we do need to do is take this off of the disc, but obviously we want to be able to do it securely so the braid doesn't come undone. So what I'm actually going to do is use a little hair grip. These are quite handy for when you're using cord and then you want to take your braid off the disc without having it come undone, obviously unless you just want to tie a knot. But if you still need to work with it, what I'm going to do is go underneath all the cords right here in the middle and then put that on the end of the braid right across just like that, and it's going to sit nicely and pretty securely as well. Obviously you don't want to be pulling at it because you can pull it off, but then what you can do is take this, all the cords here off the disc, and the braid won't come undone like that. Take the round disc away now, and then we have this little braid here. What you can always do is double check this, because obviously if it's turned out to be a bit too small after all, you can always redo the braid while you're at this stage here. So then you just want to do the same thing with the other end. Add another grip just underneath the knot, just like that there, so that holds that end, because then we just need to undo this knot here. So just gently start undoing that, and then we're going to have that braid in the middle with just the cords on either end. So then we need to actually shape the loop, so we start bringing the ends together there, so those clips are going towards each other, and then I'm just going to take one of them and put over the other end, so just something like that here, because we don't really need to keep having both of the grips on there, not separately anyway. And obviously just be careful so that we're not undoing anything, that we're keeping the hair grip right on the ends of that braid. What you can do, you can always take the other grip and put that over as well, just so you kind of have two, maybe a little bit more secure. So just like that, and then I'm just going to push them up a little bit, so right underneath where the ends finish we have basically the loose cord. So just something like that. So you can see I'm actually going to be taking this off, I think. It's not quite necessary. So you then have the rest of the cords there, and those are the ones we're now going to start making the rest of the piece with. So we need to now attach this to the square Kumihimo disc. So I get that out, and then I'm going to put the loop down through the hole in the center there, and then that grip is just going to sit right on top of that hole, just for now, because we don't need to keep it on. It's just while we're kind of getting this part started out, obviously to hold it in place still. So what I'm going to do is separate now all these cords out on this disc here, how we need them to sit. So what we need to start doing is separate them evenly, obviously, but we're going to need 6 lengths on the top side and then 6 on the bottom, and try and do it so they're separated out nicely from in here, so it kind of makes sense. They should naturally be going kind of more or less lying next to each other. So I'm going to take the first one, starting from the left side here of all these cords, and then sticking to the left side of the disc, and then the one on the bottom here. So in this case I'm using from number 4, but obviously your disc might be different, so just make sure you use the 6 middle slots on the top and the bottom, then working your way across, taking the next one that seems to be the right fit, and just filling in those 6 slots there on the top and the bottom, until it then looks a little something like this. So you can see I still have that grip right there in the middle, and it's just going to stay there for now. And on the back here we're going to have the loop coming out, and to begin with I'm just using that to hold on to on the back of the disc. And then what we need to do is start making this braid structure on the square disc. So obviously this means that it's going to be a flat braid structure. So what I'm going to do is start from the top. So I'm going to take, we have the 6 cords there, so we have 2 right there in the middle. I'm going to take the right one of the 2, release that, and then bring that over towards the left side, and then just bring that into the slot on that left side that's straight out to the side. Swap hands, and then I'm going to take the left one from the middle there on the top and bring that out to the right side. So what's happening is we're crossing them over there in the middle, so the right one goes to the left and the left one to the right, and that's how we achieve the effect that's going to be one full braid together. And then obviously we have those 2 gaps on the top, so that means we now need to start moving the cords on the top and the bottom. Because the gaps are on the top, I'm going to start from the bottom to fill them in. So I'm just starting on one side at a time, doesn't matter what side you start on. Out of the 2 middle ones on the bottom side here, I'm going to take the left one, bring that up into the left one of the empty slots on the top, and then I'm going to take the next cord out on that top side, release that, bring that down now into the empty slot on the bottom that we just freed up. Then take the next one out, bring that up, fill in the slot on the top, and then we're just going up and down like this, filling in the empty slot that we freed up with the previous movement until we used all the cords. You can see there. So now technically we have an empty slot down here, but that's going to be filled in a bit. I'm just going to do the other side first. So just do the exact same thing. The bottom one to the top and the next one out. Grab the right one. Comes down, and just continue alternating like this until we used all of them all the way out to the side, and then we end up in the same position on this side here. So you can see it doesn't matter which side I start on, that's completely up to you. And then what we need to do is finish off this round, because like I said, we now technically have those empty gaps on the bottom, and we also have these cords out to the side, so we need to get all the cords back in the original position, which means we need to bring these back in. So again, just take one side at a time. I'm going to just release the right one. And then what I like to do is just hold onto this cord with my other fingers in my hand, and just push against the cords in there while I'm pulling at the cord. So it kind of pushes them closer together. It just tightens up the braid a bit more. And then once we've done that, I bring it down into the empty slot on the bottom on the same side that it's coming from. And then swap hands and do the same thing on the other side. So release the side one. Make sure to push those cords in the middle together while you're pulling at this one up to the side to make it tighter, and then bring it down to the empty slot on the bottom. And then you can see all the cords are back in the original position. So what we need to do now is repeat this again. So we need to make this kind of round of movements that I've just done 4 times, and making sure that we cross over those 2 top ones there in the middle, so out to the opposite sides. So then once I've braided those 4 times there, you can see on the back it looks like this. So we have the loop, and then it's now connected to a more flat piece of braid there, and it's staying together better now. So what we can actually also do is remove this hair grip, because we don't need it to hold anything together anymore. So just like this, and now it just looks like a regular setup on a Kumihimo disc, obviously the square one for this. So what we need to do now is get into the actual pattern. We're also going to start adding beads in. So what that also means is we just need to change up how we do the braid a little bit. So we're going to still start with those two middle ones on the top, but instead of taking the right one and bringing it out to the left and the left one and bringing it to the right, so basically cross them over, we need to stick with the sides that they're coming from. So what that means is the first one we're going to take is the left one out of those two middle ones, and then I'm going to bring that out to the left side, and then the right one, I'll release that and then bring that out to the right side. So as you can see, instead of crossing them in the middle there, we're just taking them straight out to the side. And what this is actually going to do is start to form two separate braids next to each other instead of connecting them there in the middle. And then we'll need to otherwise do the exact same thing. So we're going to start from the bottom because it's the top where we have the empty space. Start one side and then start moving all of them to the opposite side there, filling up the empty slot from the previous movement until you reach the side, and then repeat on the other side all the way out to the side, taking one cord at a time. And you're going to already be able to start to see that that gap in the middle starts to form between the two braids. But again, just like before, we need to bring these back in. So it's really the same braid structure. The only difference is right there in the middle, the first two cords that we take, we make sure to bring them to the same side instead of crossing them over. So take the side ones there, make sure to still just push those cords together, because we want these, you could call them individual braids now, to still be nice and even. And bring that down. And then take the other one and bring that down as well. So you want to do this a few times until we need to add in the first bead. So I did 2 rounds of this braid structure here with the individual braids, and then I reached the point where I have enough of a gap between them there to add the first bead. So that's what I'm going to do now. So to do that, what we need to do is release those 2 middle cords on the top side that we've been using first for every new round that we've been doing. I'm just going to release them first of all, and then bring them to the top here, because then what I want to do is add the bead onto these. So I'm going to grab my first bead and then put one cord through the hole first of all, so like that. Then I take the other cord through the hole but in the opposite direction, and that's why having those singed ends on the cord really helps as well. Makes it easier to get it through like that. And then all I'm going to do to get the bead down is pull both of these cords tight, which then brings the bead down right there in the middle of the 2 braids, so right in between them. And you need to pull it a bit tight so we make sure that the bead gets right in between them, so when we continue to braid, we're not going to have a lot of spacing and gap with excess cord here between the bead and those braids on the side. So you want to make sure you have it nice and tight. Now technically, obviously, these cords have now crossed in the middle of that bead, so technically this is the cross we're doing when we're continuing braiding, where it's just one full braid, but obviously this is just to add in the bead. Then I'm going to just take these cords and put them out to the side because they're naturally going there anyway. And then all I'm going to do is continue braiding on the sides to continue making those braids, individual ones on the sides. So moving all the top and the bottom ones across to the opposite side. And that's one side. Do the same on the other side here. Moving one at a time all the way out until you used all of them. Just like that. And then again the side ones, you just want to make sure to push them close. Again, just to make sure if there's any cord showing or any gaps in there between the bead and the braids, that we kind of close that up now and bring it down. Same on the other side, just to make sure to tighten everything up nicely. And that's another full round, and that's then how we add in the bead. So now we have to go back to making the 2 individual braids on the side. So that means on the top here, I'm going to take the left one of the 2 middle ones and then bring it out to the left side, so stay on the same side, and then the right one goes out to the right side. So we don't cross them in this case here because we're making the individual braids, and then otherwise just keep moving the top and the bottom ones across to the opposite sides. And then basically we want to continue making these individual braids, so a few rounds of these, until we reach the next point where we need to add in a bead. So I now reached that point here where I want to add in my next bead, and the amount of rounds that I've done is 2 after the bead that I just added in. So I add the bead, I don't count that round while I'm adding the bead, but then after we've made that round with the bead in, then I make another 2 full rounds in this way here, and then the third one I'm going to start is now the one where I want to add the next bead. So you just do that the same way, release the top 2 cords there in the middle, and then I'm going to get my bead, put that on one cord first, and then put the other cord through it in the opposite direction, and get that through there, because then that's where again the cords are crossing but inside the bead, and as I'm pulling this down it's going to end up sitting just perfectly. Remember to do it quite tight so the braids sit right next to the holes basically in the bead. And then, if we can see it here, that's going to fit just perfectly there. So the beads are going to sit more or less right next to each other. A little bit of gap between them, doesn't matter, that's perfectly fine. Rather a bit of space between the beads than them being too tight together, because then they'll kind of just buckle up on each other. And I put the cords out to the side in the slots, and then all you got to do is continue with the top and the bottom ones. So you keep doing this, making the round where you add the bead, and then doing 2 rounds of just the individual braids on either side, and then keep doing that until you reach the length that you need. So now that I reach the point here where I have the length that I want, then you have the braid coming out on the back, and it looks a little something like this. You can see you get this really nice effect of all the beads running in the middle, and then kind of separate braids on each side, but it's all connected together, and you have the loop on the other end. So then what we got to do is deal with this end here. So we obviously got to kind of finish it the way that we started it. So I want to bring the 2 separate braids together again. So what that means is after that last bead, again I've just done 2 rounds of the single ones on either side. Then what I'm going to do is go back to crossing over the middle cord. So I take the right one of the 2 middle ones on the top and bring that over to the left. Then I take the left one and bring that over to the right. So just like we did in the beginning. And you can pull them a bit tighter, but you can also do that once we brought all these cords over the middle to the opposite side. So we're just going to be doing that again. Taking one at a time. Moving right till the end. That's the first side, and then do the same on the other side. So far you can see there's still quite loose right there in the middle. Don't worry too much about that, because we just bring all these cords across. And then the very last one, and then this is then where we take the side ones to bring down, but we're going to push them close, and that's also then going to help right there in the middle. That's the opportunity to then kind of push that, and what you can do is just take both sides at the same time, just to really get them sitting evenly. So basically we bring the 2 braids to sit right next to each other, and then you can bring them both down. And obviously if you need to get everything else back into place. So just like that, you can see we now have the 2 braids sitting next to each other again. And then all you do is continue this the same amount of times that we did in the beginning. So once we've done the rounds, to remove it from the disc, because we're done making the Kumihimo now, I'm going to again get one of my hair grips, and then underneath all the cords in the middle there, but right on the end of the braid, push that in over, all the way across, just catching all of them there. There we go. And then that's going to just hold it tight for now, because again I don't want to tie off a knot or anything. I just want to kind of have the cords open here, and then we're going to finish it off. But then I can take all the cords off the disc without worrying about this coming undone. Again, obviously don't kind of pull at the hair grip, because it can be pulled off quite easily, but it's going to hold them in place just for now. And just take this disc away as well. So there you can see we then have pretty much the full bracelet. We just have this end to finish off, which obviously is where we need to attach the button, so we can then use that along with the loop. So then I'm just taking my mini macrame board here just to kind of have something to work on, because what I'm actually going to be doing is doing some macrame on this end to then also attach the button. So then I'm going to take my bracelet and kind of attach it to the macrame board here. So we have a nice working area. And then I have all the cords coming down just like this. And then what we need to do now, like I said, is make some macrame knots to be able to basically secure all this in place. So first of all, I'm just separating out the two outer cords. And you can quite easily find out which ones they are. They're naturally on the sides there, and they're actually the last ones that came through from the middle. So just separate them out. And then using those two outer cords there, let's get that in position. I'm going to just make basically a square knot but around all of these cords. So all these are going to right now technically all holding cords. So just make a square knot here, regular square knot, bring one over, the other one over that, and then underneath all of those cords in the middle, make sure you grab all of them. And then up through the loop on the other side. And I've still got that grip in there because obviously the cords aren't fastened yet. But then I'm starting to tighten this all the way up, right underneath that grip. And if you need to, when you're tightening this, you can maybe see some of them right above where the knot is going to sit, and maybe kind of buckling up a little bit, crumbling a bit. So you can just pull individual cords here to make sure you straighten them out if you need to, just to make it look nice and even throughout. But otherwise, tighten this nicely around all these cords, just like that here. And what we're also going to need to do is start getting rid of some of these, because we have quite a lot of these cords left now, because obviously they were all made to use to make the braid. So we need to get rid of some of them as well. So to do that, what I'm going to do is get in a glue. So right now I'm just using this GS Hypo Cement, and I'm going to be doing this throughout. I'm just using this because I like the extra security from that longevity wise. So I just made the first half of that knot. What I'm going to do then is just get a bit of glue out, and I'm just going to add some of that glue on top of these holding cords here. Right now mostly in towards the middle. So obviously I want to make sure to add it so you can't really see the glue, but we're going to be making more knots on top of this. I just like to add the glue kind of so that the glue is going to end up inside the knots and hold it from within. And also especially around the cords that I'm planning on probably cutting off next. So just get a bit of glue in there. And then while the glue is still wet, I'm then going to make the other half of this square knot. So first of all, just tighten the first half again. You can also just take this off now just to make sure everything looks the way I want it to. If you need to pull anything tight, because you can obviously see all the cords better. But once you're happy with it, then take the other cord, start with the other one, and bring that over. And then bring the other one over that and underneath all of the cords in the middle. Just double check, make sure you got all of them. And then tighten this half on top of that glue. Just like that. And then you can see we have one full square knot, but also the glue there is going to basically be hidden inside of the knots for now. So just like that. So that's our very first square knot, and this end is more or less now secure. What we just got to do now, like I said, is starting to get rid of some of these cords as well before we can add in the button. Now before I cut any off, I just want to do one more square knot here, because otherwise some of these cords that we're going to be cutting off might be able to pull out up here a bit more easily. So one more just will do the trick to hold them nice and tight. And again, that's over that wet glue as well. So once this dries, and obviously we have cut anything off, it's going to be really nice and secure in there. But then to cut off some of these cords, I'm going to get my scissors ready. So I have them here, and then I just want to choose which ones I want to cut off. So I kind of like to go towards the middle of all the cords first, because then they help kind of cover each other up, you could say. So I'm going to pick out two first of all. So I might do these two here, they're right in the middle of all of them. So get all the other ones out of the way. Like that, and then cut off these two. Really nice and close to where they're coming out from. Like that. And bring them all down again. And then what we can do is always add a little bit more glue, because I like to do this as we go before we make the next few knots. If there's no glue right around here, just add a bit more. Again, also kind of within, right in between these cords, because that's going to really make sure that it's not going to come undone. Even obviously with the knots, I just like the extra security. So add the glue. Something like that. And then while it's wet, we need to start the next knot. So start from the same side, make the first half of your square knot and tighten that on top of that glue. And now I've made the first half there, and then while I'm in the middle of this knot, you could say, I'm going to pick out another 2 cords and cut them off as well. And the reason that I'm doing this within the knot is just because if we're going to make one knot every time we cut them off, this is going to end up being quite a long piece. And obviously we don't want it to extend the bracelet too much. So I'm just going to pick out another pair of cords that I can then cut off without adding too much length to the bracelet. Bring all them back down. Again, I'm kind of trying to go towards the middle. As long as I can do that, obviously at one point we're going to not be able to do that. And make the other half of the square knot. Tighten that. And then we're going to have these left, so the amount of cords that we have left are 4 and 2 there. So that's 6 in total, but what we're going to want to do is actually be left with 2. So I'm just going to get rid of another 4. So what that means is basically just repeat what I've just showed you. Make another knot and get rid of 2 in the first half, and then get rid of another 2 in the second half. And then we're going to be left with 2 holding cords right there in the middle. And we'll be ready to add the button. So now I'm left with just the 2 holding cords there, and obviously the 2 working cords. It's time to add in the bead. So I'm just going to get it out here, and then I need to bring both of these cords through that hole in the back, just in the same direction. And then we're going to push this all the way up to sit right there, basically right underneath the last knot until we won't go any further. You can always just place this into one of the slots, and then we need to cage that in so it sits and stays in place. I'm just going to do that with these working cords by making another square knot around now the 2 holding cords there. And then make sure that the knot gets trapped underneath the bead, and then tighten that. Then it's already nicely in place. So just another square knot there. And then basically what this I have to do is just finish off the ends. So right now I have 1 square knot after the button. I like to just do another one, but before I do, again, I like to just add in a bit of glue, and I then put that basically on top of the holding cords there. Just waiting for a bit of glue to come out. So put it right on top of the holding cords, both on that side but also underneath the button, obviously making sure the button doesn't get stuck to the cord. Just get it all the way around here. So this part is going to also be nice and secure, because we don't want to obviously have done all this hard work and then right in the end where the button's attached is going to maybe come loose one day. Then all I'm going to do is make another square knot, and that is then going to sit right on top of that wet glue. So obviously when it dries, it's going to help hold everything in place. It just adds that bit extra, quite a bit extra security actually, than just the knots themselves. So you can see, and it also hides the glue nicely. Now this glue does dry clear and it's nice and strong, but what happens is when you use this kind of cord, quite often the glue will affect the way it looks, so make it darker looking. So by adding the glue basically inside the knots, that's going to help that as well to not be so visible. So then all you gotta do is, I'm gonna just detach this, obviously wait for it to dry, but then you just gotta, if you want to add a bit extra glue on the outside here, you can, around where the cords are coming out from. That's gonna also add the extra security. And then once you've done that and it's all dried, cut off the excess, and also obviously the 2 holding cords, just cut them off straight where they're coming out from. And then once you've done all that, your full bracelet will be done. So there's the button now fully attached, so it's nice and secure, and then obviously it's ready to then just start wearing. So use that to secure with the loop, and it fits just perfectly, and also gives a nice look. So obviously when you're wearing the bracelet, if this flips around to the front because it's a nice button, that's alright as well, be a nice feature. But then you have the rest of the bracelet coming around like this. So it gives a really nice effect with the beads running all the way down through the middle of the bracelet, and then kind of that individual braid on either side, but it's still all fully attached together. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.